Hello, this is Scott Herbst. I am founder and president of Six Flex Training and Consulting, and you are listening to or watching The Flex. This is a conversation show where we talk with people who are expressing their leadership with the intention that it open access to you expressing yours. Today, I'm really excited to introduce you to Jamie Turner. Jamie is the president of Acclaim Autism. They are an employee-owned and BCBA-led company that does center-based, school-based, and community-based services in Pennsylvania and California. For now, they are growing. And as usual, I am going to really let you hear Jamie's story from Jamie. So, Jamie, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. So I always like to start with the question, share your story, and you can go back as far as you like to where, how you found the field of behavior analysis. And what I think our listeners are particularly interested in is your pathway to leadership. What led you to being president of Acclaim Autism?
Sure. I had a bit of a backwards path into ABA, like most people, I'd say. I it was an odd journey. So I actually started off in business school, and straight out of business school, I went to work for a nonprofit, which nobody really does going out of business school. Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds odd, right?
yeah. I tend to not do things the standard way that most people would. So
Probably really useful for a nonprofit, though.
it was very useful for a nonprofit.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed my time there. It was a large nonprofit. I was working on the IT and operations side of things, and helping to streamline processes and help get kids into college, including kids with disabilities. So very much a related space, and it was I really enjoyed my time there.
Yeah.
At some point, I kind of decided I wanted to start my own thing and
Hmm.
put my skills to use more directly in a field rather than kind of sitting in an office all day behind a screen and making decisions. So
Yeah.
I had a friend in the ABA field who was working in ABA in another state and told me all about it, and I liked the idea of it. So we kept talking and talking, and probably a year went by, and I decided, okay, I want to finally make the move and jump ship and start my own thing and make a direct impact. And that's how I found it, and haven't looked back since.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, what was it like to go into from a business background, though managing operations, to uh, now you're a behavior analyst, and let's talk about your pathway to where you are now.
Sure. I'd say I started off using whatever I'll call them business skills that I did learn, in school and working for the nonprofit, and started off with, policies and procedures. And, if I was to build an organization the right way where people want to work here and things are organized, how would I build it?
Mm-hmm.
Started to lay those foundations and, work on that license and sort of get going that way. And, partnered with another BCBA at the time who became our first clinical director. And, she kind of taught me all the clinical sides of things, at the early stages.
Yeah.
And I was applying all the business skills, and it was a pretty good partnership to get started and start growing. And while my friend in another state also ended up joining us and helping out as well. And yeah, he kind of jumped ship, and he's here full time now as well. And it just kind of kept growing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What I always love to hear from people are about some of the challenges you faced as you've moved from working to for someone else or on someone else's vision to really yours. And what you've, I guess, what I would say is your where your know-how kind of ran out and you hit some sort of a wall or found out you didn't know something or felt like you were in over your head, and what you learned from that.
Sure. Yeah. There's definitely been a lot of things like that. I'd say to start with, I invested so much time in just documenting things, So every
Hmm.
possible scenario that somebody could encounter while doing community or school-based services, it was documented. And, there was who to reach out to, what they should say, who should do what. It was very, very clear, almost like a giant manual that anyone could access anytime they wanted. And it was great for me. It was great for our clinical director and maybe one or two other people, but not so great for everyone who's actually out there with clients all day in schools and homes where when they run into a problem, they're not going to log into their tablet, find some website, do a search and try and find out what to do. That just takes too much time. They've got this kid sitting there.
Yeah.
And it was like a square peg in a round hole. It just didn't work. So, I ended up having to kind of meet people where they are and figure out, okay, how should I communicate to you when there's a problem? Or how can you communicate to me? Or who should you communicate to? And just having to kind of figure all that out because, when we first started, we wanted to make sure BCBAs didn't have to shoulder all that burden of every problem that comes up, whether it's scheduling or something else. We tried to lighten their load, and a lot of that fell on me. But,
Yeah.
how do we divide responsibilities clearly between people and communicate them and make sure everyone is on the same page? And that was probably the biggest challenge we had for maybe 2 years when we first started. And really just getting everyone on the same page was probably the first step where it felt overwhelming because, BCBA said, operations should be doing all of this. And operations said, well, these things are more clinical. And, that was probably the biggest hurdle was just trying to get to the root of that, get everyone aligned, which we eventually did, uh,
Yeah.
and just communicate with people over and over and over again, whether it's through emails or phone calls or meetings or town hall meetings, whatever the case is, just making sure people hear the same messages consistently whenever there's some kind of update.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of consistent flow of communication through multiple channels eventually started to work, and things started to feel maybe a little less burdensome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, there's a couple things I'm interested in pulling apart, teasing apart a little bit. One is and we talked about this offline, but the I mean, it sounds like you really tried to get ahead of any problem that you could foresee, and that didn't quite work, right? It was like, man, all this work I've done to make sure that problems don't happen or to like deal with problems quickly didn't work. um a lot of people, I don't know if it's a lot, but I've heard people who get into a trap of like, all right, well, that didn't work, so I've got to do more, right? And will sometimes people will fall into the trap of doing more of the same and leading to more of the frustration, right? um so I'm thinking of my like I do this with my wife. uh I'm like a very logical person,
Hmm.
and she gets upset with me and I'll be like, oh my god, logic is the answer, and she's not looking for logic, right? And I'll be like, oh my, well then I've got to be more logical, and then we're having one of those like 2 or 3 day fights. uh so I'm curious if there was something like an insight that you had that you realized like, oh, like I've got to be more flexible or I've got to try a different approach, that had you, oh, like shift direction.
Yeah, I completely relate to talking to my wife as well and those fights. But yeah, I would say we used to rely really heavily on email to communicate things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm pretty articulate in outlining, here's any policy, here's the rationale for it,
Yeah.
right? Like we should do, and and here's what it is, here's when it applies, here's when it doesn't. But the reality is, if you fire off an email to a large group of people, a small percentage of them are going to read it,
Yeah.
and out of whatever percentage of people that actually read it, they're probably going to understand it each in a different way, right?
Yeah.
Right? Not quite what I intended. It's just typical communication. So yeah, at one point I sent out an email. I don't recall what the exact policy was, but yeah, I was talking to different people, and one said, "Yeah, I really like this, and and here's why, and here's how I applied it." And I thought, well, that's not quite what I said, right? But thanks for letting me know. And somebody else
Yeah.
said, I don't know what this means. Can you tell me more? And I thought, well, how do all these people understand things in a different way? And so that was kind of my aha moment that, hey, there's a problem here. Like, we can't just keep firing off emails. That doesn't work. Even though we're distributed, email is not a great way to communicate.
Yeah.
Not for everybody anyway. And I thought back to one of the best bosses I ever had, years ago. He always told me, if you want to communicate a message to a group of people, you've got to communicate the same thing 7 times, 7 different ways.
Hmm.
Right. So that could be different communication channels. It could be explaining things a little different, maybe giving a different example. But I started making that my mantra, and it really worked. So I would fire off an email for anyone who learns that way. Um, and then I would list off what are 6 other ways I can communicate to get through to this whole organization so people really understand. And yeah, there's a variety of ways, whether it's town halls or all the other ways I mentioned earlier. And sometimes just talking to people to say, hey, did you hear that message? Can you tell me your understanding of that? Just give me some feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really want to underline that. That's a really powerful practice. And I think that's something that anyone, like a BCBA who just took on their team, or someone who just got like became accountable for training and developing and trying to get this knowledge from here to there, can use, which is that it's really to check for understanding and to really check, not just like to ask, does this make sense? Because we all, well, again, not we, I can see I do, and I watch people do this, is default to saying a lot and then saying, does this make sense? And it's a very different question to ask. Tell me what you heard. Like, tell me your understanding of that.
Absolutely. It's like someone just saying, can you confirm that everything I said was great? And people want to make you happy. So they're just going to say yes, whether or not they understood.
Yeah,
Uh,
or they don't want to look stupid. It's like it takes a little courage to say no, right? Because I feel when I like don't understand something, like I feel like I missed something, right?
yeah, that's a very valid concern.
Yeah.
Yeah, and asking people, just being genuine and authentic, and maybe a little humble to say, hey, I'm working on my communication. Can you just tell me what you just heard me say? I just want to make sure that I got the messaging right. Right. And that really takes the burden off of them from feeling like they might feel like they're stupid. um,
Yeah.
right? And it puts it more on me, which makes them feel comfortable.
So where we left off, I don't know how long you talked after we got cut off, but the last thing I remember you saying is we were talking about how communicating and taking ownership really takes the burden off of others.
Yeah, that's kind of where we
And
ended. I
yeah.
Yeah.
So could you back up a little bit and pick up that thread and we can go from there?
Yeah, sure. Just really the power of asking for feedback the right way, and
Hmm.
not just looking for confirmation that everything's great, right? So saying something like, hey, I'm working on my communication delivery, right? And
Yes.
just being humble and kind of opening up a little bit to people and say, can you give me some feedback? Tell me what it is that you just heard me say, and if there might have been a better way to say it, right?
Yeah.
And I'll say that to anybody, right? Whether it's someone on my leadership team, whether it's a technician at a BCBA, anybody, and just give them a chance to kind of give that direct feedback, and they'll feel empowered, and they usually walk away with a smile on their face after having that chance.
Yeah. I think that's really great. I can hear a lot. I want to talk more about this. Because one thing I can see that does, in addition to one, asking an open-ended question versus a yes, no. Because yes, no, it's really easy just to take an opportunity to, cool, I don't have to do, like, I don't have to say anything. It's easy to say no, right? without really looking, if there is something for people to say, have asking the open-ended question will at least have them look, right? So it like opens a door for feedback. Um, what I really like what you said is you said prefacing it with, "Hey, I'm working on myself here." And I imagine that that's a pretty powerful statement. One, it like it's more inviting, right?
Hmm.
Like now it's not just like feedback is bad news or if it's tough feedback, right? Or constructive feedback. It takes it off the bad news to actually now being an opportunity to contribute. Like if you say, "Hey, I'm working on myself. I really want this." Now whatever I have to say is like it's almost like I'm giving you a gift now, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. We do related to that. So we do these focus groups with any new employee that starts with us. So 30 or 30 days in, or maybe 2 months in, I'll have a meeting with everyone who started with us in the last month or two. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just by Zoom. And I'll usually kind of kick things off with saying like, hey, I have these meetings just so number one, we have a chance to meet. And,
Yeah.
and number two, this is for feedback. And I tell them a story. Like I've been doing this for 2 years now. And before we started doing these, we had a lot of problems, right? And we're not perfect
Mm-hmm.
now, but we had so many problems and people gave really good feedback. And we take that feedback and, we can't fix it in a day, but, we fix it over time and things continually get better. And one of the first questions I ask people is, how was your onboarding? Right? Did you feel you had enough training? Did you feel prepared for your first client? How did everything go? Did you show up at the session knowing what to do with your technology ready? And your supervisor was there to support you. Your BCBA was there. And now I would say 9 times out of 10, people are just thrilled. They've said they felt prepared, they felt trained, they knew who their BCBA was. Their BCBA was supportive, engaging. For the most part, everything's great, but it wasn't always that way. And and once they're done giving that feedback, I tell them our onboarding used to be terrible, right? When I first started doing these focus groups, I got 9 times out of 10 probably some negative feedback, which is okay, right? Because we
Mm-hmm.
took that, people gave concrete examples of what we could do better, and now we do better, right? And that also helps them feel a little bit comfortable because they can see the history and they can see that giving feedback results in positive things and is not a bad thing. And that makes them more comfortable sharing other feedback about how things are right now so we can keep getting better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to underline that as well. The actually saying that, uh, we have had some problems and we've used these to solicit feedback and we've acted on that feedback and we've seen things get better, has got to create a way of looking at it again, kind of like, hey, I'm working on myself of, oh, like the feedback is valuable. And um, I guess that's kind of it. That's that point. Um, cool. How did I'm curious how you got to a point where it was like, oh, this is what's needed. Where, like you said, you were having a lot of problems and then you started doing it. What was the light bulb moment or the insight that had you be, this is what's needed?
I don't know if there was a single moment. I would say we've always had, any company has a long list of things that people don't like that need to be fixed, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's true for ABA companies, nonprofits, corporate world. I would say pretty much everywhere. Nowhere is perfect. It's a matter of admitting it and working on it. So at any given time, I've got a laundry list of things to work on, and it's just a matter of prioritizing what's most important. So,
Mm-hmm.
hearing from people, obviously compliance and clients are, top of the list, right? We have to be compliant. We have to make sure that our clients are making progress. We have to make sure that our staff are happy, trained, engaged. And so all those items take priority. Um, sometimes it's like splitting hairs trying to decide what to do next, but You talk to people, figure out what they feel is most important to them and what would be most impactful, and it becomes pretty easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just seeing a need to prioritize.
Uh,
And
yeah. Yeah. And getting other people's opinions too. It's not just about what I think is important. It's about, what do BCBAs in this area feel like is important? What are they complaining about right now? What would make their lives significantly easier? And that's what we work on.
yeah. Do things come up that you're not going to work on?
Yeah, yeah. I'd say there's things that have been on my list for years, and I don't know that we'll ever get to them. Um,
Yeah. Now, how do you communicate that and deal with that?
I've had people come to me with something that's important to them, which is valid, right? It's important.
Yeah.
So so it is important, and I'll tell them we have call it 300 things right on a list, and I'll say what you're saying is valid, and it will be on the list. However, I need to set expectations with you that all these other things are going to be higher priority. And although your item is important to you and it's something we hope to eventually get to, I can't make any promises that it's going to be anytime soon. And just try and set those expectations with people that, hey, I've had things on the list for years at this point, and just being very
Hmm.
transparent.
How does
Explain
that
why.
generally go over?
They appreciate the candidness, I'd say.
Yeah.
So just being genuine and authentic with people and very transparent, I think is helpful. If you say we've got these 10 things that, insurance companies have made clear are going to be important, and if we don't do these 10 things in the next year, we're not going to be in compliance anymore. And, something like that is a very big deal because it's an organization license, it's BCBAs have a state license, in Pennsylvania. Like these are important things to people. These are people's livelihoods.
Yes.
Right. So that becomes top priority, and that's why. And usually they understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a valuable insight. I talk to a lot of business owners who have difficulty communicating those things that they're not going to get to, and communicating in a way that indicates I value what I appreciate what matters to you, and it is important. And uh for the sake of the business, the broader organization, this is what we're focused on now.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes I take a slightly different approach where, depending on the person's role and what, they might have access to changing, I'll say, if you feel it's that important to you, you can feel free to work on this, right? Like you can feel empowered and work on it. If it's some low level of effort thing that'll make a big difference to that one person, you can
Hmm.
do it. We can't commit other organization resources to work on it, but if you feel it's that important to you, go ahead and do it. But if you need other people to do something, it's going to be a while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, any well, let me back up a little bit. I got a little distracted by our um oh, I here's what I was curious about. What have you discovered? You said communicate things 7 times, 7 different ways. Did I get that?
You did. Yeah.
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 I am curious, as you've grown, what have you learned about that process and what works and how to do that, as I imagine you can't always see communication happening.
Yep. You're absolutely right about that. When we first started, well, a little while after we started, one of those 7 ways was relying on someone's direct supervisor to communicate something. And
Yeah.
what we learned was more often than not, they didn't actually communicate it. Um, Sometimes they didn't receive the communication themselves, or sometimes they did and they were confused and just didn't know how to explain it. So they just didn't come forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. So getting other people to buy into that mantra, right? 7 times, 7 different ways, has been maybe one of the ways that we've dealt with it, where we have weekly leadership calls, and whenever something new comes up, we'll say, okay, how are we going to communicate this? Right? This is a policy change. Who needs to know? When do they need to know it? How are we going to communicate it? And we'll even draft together, like, here are the 7 ways we want to communicate it. And if it's something absolutely critical, like this is compliance, like we need to do this, we need to make sure people understand. We could put it in a handbook, make people sign off that they understand it. Sometimes respond back to an email saying, yeah, I got this. And, a text message, yeah, I've got it. Or an indirect supervision note saying, talk to so and so about this. They understand, right? Just some sort of confirmation that people understand and will take some kind of action based off what they just learned.
Yeah, awesome. I'm hearing a theme here, and the theme I'm hearing in a couple different ways is I'm going to call it being responsible. And what I mean by that is that because you could take the case with communication, for example, that I sent you the email and it's on you to make sure you've read the email. And then people don't. And from that view, if they don't, they're jerks, right? Um, it's a shift from that way of doing things to no, I am going to be certain, like over my dead body, they are getting this message, and I'm going to find what it takes to get to them. And I imagine there's probably like lines there where you've got agreements in place, like you got to read your email, you got to respond to text messages, etc. Um, but I appreciate the responsibility, right? Like, no, we're going to find ways to make sure this happens. We're not leaving it to chance, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's easy to just kind of say, email sent, my job is done. But at the end of the day, we're accountable for delivering X, Y, and Z, right? And if someone doesn't get the message, we're responsible. So
Yes.
I think responsibility is the key word that you use there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other place I've heard responsibility is really owning the delivery of the message. Going back to hey, I'm working on myself. I want to hear from you. And oh, I can just hear like you really earlier you said like really taking the burden of that. Like taking the burden of feedback and taking it off of them, putting it here.
Yeah, a lot of people, if you think about our workforce, a lot of our technicians are still in college or fresh out of college, on the younger side of things and much less experienced and maybe not that comfortable if a business owner or a BCBA or someone on the executive team walks up to them and starts talking. It's easy to just clam up and not feel
Yeah.
comfortable. Um, so it's our responsibility to get feedback from them because they won't always tell you, right? They'll sometimes, especially in this field where it's so hard to staff cases and RBTs are in such high demand, if they're not happy with something, they can just leave and go somewhere else. And it's like a revolving door sometimes
Yeah.
where people just want to keep switching companies, hoping the grass is greener on the other side. And usually it's not, right? But getting feedback from them, number one, at least they feel heard. If nothing else, even if we can't do anything about it, they feel heard and validated. But number two, it actually gives us a chance to fix something and improve. And that's probably one of the best retention strategies is people giving feedback and then us taking action on it.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, I want to say we're getting close to our time. Actually don't know with that interruption, but I do have a couple more questions. So we've kind of heard about what you've learned along the way. I am curious, what is your next challenge, both organizationally and how are you looking to grow and develop yourself?
Yeah, I would say to start with, I'm trying to get all of my day-to-day tasks kind of off my plate and focus more on the leadership side of things.
Mm.
Yeah, when we
What does that look like for you?
every day is a little different, so
Uh-huh.
I can wear a lot of different hats, which I need to. And it can be really challenging, right? Most BCBAs have to play a lot of different roles and talking to a lot of different people. And, uh, a business leader is very much the same. And, no 2 days are the same depending on if insurance billing is happening one day or an insurance meeting is happening the next, or maybe a clinical meeting in a center the next day. Every day is a little bit different. But just getting maybe that administrative work off my plate a little bit more is kind of the next step, and just making sure that our teams feel empowered to make decisions even more so than they are right now. And they have the autonomy and freedom to do that, which they do, but just helping them get more comfortable doing that, I think will start to free up some of my time to maybe spend more time just setting the organization direction, and spending more time with people, uh, and just making sure everyone's pointed the same way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
Yeah.
Couple more questions. What are you proud of?
Really proud of this company and all the great people that we have here. It's pretty incredible that we've been able to kind of grow the way we have, but do so the right way, both ethically and with clients and staff first.
Mhm.
Uh, we, all that work we put in at the start with those SOPs that I mentioned, uh, it was really valuable. And even if it didn't help as many people as we thought it would, it was really valuable as an organization. So, as we kind of grew, we had something, grounded. Like we weren't building the airplane in the air, right? We already kind of had everything prepared on some level, which was helpful. So yeah, just developing people to kind of be part of this system, and everyone working on it together, I think is pretty incredible.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then my last question is, how can people reach you if they'd like to reach out?
Sure. They can email me, jturner@acclaimautism.com, and I can send you that email address after if you'd like.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think that's pretty simple. Jamie, thank you so much for being here. And thanks for being willing to share what you've learned with our listeners. I know I and they really appreciate it.
Yeah. The pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much, Scott. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And this wraps up this episode. So thank you for listening, and we will see you back here next time.